Today I'm going to be speaking to Claus Jørgensen, who's a former professional footballer for Bournemouth and Coventry City. How's it going, mate? You okay?
I'm all right, Danny. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Long time no see. You still look fresh as ever. How's life? How's things for you at the moment?
Yeah, they're all right. They're good. I'm over in Denmark now. Obviously, football is certainly the active career long gone. Feel it in my knees. Yeah, it's all good. Stepped into the civilian world.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think the last time we seen each other was probably when you joined Tamworth. We spent like I think you were there for a few weeks or a couple of months or whatever, and then you kind of disappeared. And I didn't, as you know, in football, people just leave and then you don't see them again. So obviously, really appreciate you coming on, obviously, just wanted to know kind of what you're up to nowadays. Like, what's your day to day? Kind of what you up to, kind of work wise.
Yeah. Well, you just touched on Tamworth there. Just with a comment there was I sort of finished at Blackpool in 2009, and in the spring I took my first sort of civilian job in an office. But then I had a chance to go and train with Tamworth with Gary Mills was a manager, and I remember you were there. But so I did pre-season, and then it sort of fell through 2 days before the season started, and that was the end of my football. But yeah, so jumping on 12 years or so. I live in Denmark now. I'm with a company that is a digital business development they're working in. So and I'm working on trying to sell an app, a white label app to the tourism industry, to visit organizations. So it gets you speaking to a lot of people. It gets you involved, or it gets me involved with taking a product from trying to go out and capture a market. So I've been helping with the getting customers in the US and in the UK and also in Denmark now. So, but that's civilian job now. I did a lot. 2 days after I left Tamworth, I decided I was going to start my own company in flooring in England. So did that floor renovation for 10 years and football coaching alongside as well. So yeah, but it's probably what we're going to talk about here as well. You're full of energy, well, sometimes as a player, and you feel you can do stuff, and then all of a sudden it's finished. And you want to channel that energy, and it was a frustrating period at times.
Wow, it's amazing. And obviously, you've come, like you said, you've kind of tried your hand at Tamworth, and then it didn't really work out. And we've all been there in football; it can happen at kind of a drop of a hat, really. And then you've gone literally straight from there, and you've kind of created your own kind of pathway into like Civvy Street. So obviously, that's amazing from that perspective. And it sounds like what you're doing now is really interesting as well. So, talk to me about kind of your retirement process, your transition. Like, how was that from not only just a physical perspective, but what was like for yourself from a mental perspective? Like, what were you going through at that particular time?
Well, I don't think. I was always going to be the one who was going to be pushed out of football. I was going to carry on and carry on and carry on. I was physically all right. I was never one to put on weight. I was never the quickest, and obviously I wasn't getting any quicker as I was getting older. But that wasn't the big issue. But sometimes you just run out of luck, circumstances, and in the end, I've had 10 years as a player in England, and it's hard at the time, but after a few years, you come to accept, well, it has to end for people. It has to end for you as well. But it was, I was disappointed, but as you get older in football, you know yourself sometimes, because football is a bubble. I'd come to a point where I was looking forward to trying something else. I didn't want to stop football, but I wanted to try something else and be in another environment. and I always wanted to be self-employed or have my own business. So once the situation there finished with when I didn't get offered a contract in the end at Tamworth, or actually it was offered, but then it was pulled. Then I decided I wasn't going to hang around for another year because I'd already spent 1 year. So yeah, it's the difficult thing is that your personality, your identity is wrapped up with being a footballer. And I mean, it was a lot worse for a lot of other players because I didn't turn professional till I was 23. So I tried, working. I worked, odd jobs, roofing, and was one of them. And I've done national service. I tried other stuff, so a bit on university before I got my contract.
Okay.
But the ones that are in an academy from little, my lad is in Coventry Academy, and you can see everything's football, obviously, and it was for you and me as well when we were kids, probably with you as well. But all from a little boy, they become footballers. And that must be hard for I'm looking at some of my teammates, ex-teammates. When they come to finish or have come to finish, it is evident that it's hard because what can you do? We're going to talk about transferable skills, and it's hard because your identity is football. And as you're getting better and better in your mind, obviously your body's not keeping pace, but then it's finished as you are better than you are ever. So
and I think what makes it worse, you kind of mentioned there, like identity, and I think sometimes what makes that worse is other people's perception of you. And if they just see you as the footballer and you're surrounded by people who see you as that, as in family and friends, when it comes to that transition period, retirement, it can make it a bit more difficult. And everyone's got a different scenario. I think I was quite lucky because my kind of core friends, they weren't footballers really. So from that perspective, I was again really, really lucky. Obviously, you mentioned your kind of transition process there. Did you get any help at all when it comes to kind of your retirement and that stage where you're thinking, well, what's next for me? Did you get any help from any kind of organisations or anyone at all?
No, and as I was going through that time, I was thinking, there must be an easier way. There must be something that can prepare you. I know at some point there's a line that that was your football days. Now it's something else, and you have to deal with something. But and I know the PFA, they're doing a lot of courses of education. If you want to do a trade or if you want to study to do something, they offer you help in that way. But it wasn't until I started my own business, I started doing local business networking, and you go out meeting people, meeting other businesses. I went. There was a company called LMI, Leadership Management UK, or something like that. And as a very good guy, he offered me to come on a program, self-development program. And it wasn't until then that I realized, well, this is what you need as a player coming towards the end of your career. You need to do not necessarily do a study or do a course in accounting, because you don't know if you're going to be an accountant. You need to sort of strip yourself back a little bit and find out what's your values, who are you, and because we live in the football world and everything's weekend to weekend or Saturday, Tuesday. It can sometimes be hard to fit another thing in, fit too many other interests in. And then obviously there could be complacency from people as well. But this thing about finding out who are you, I thought it would be really beneficial to have that kind of course made available to you.
That's amazing. And again, the self-development, because a lot of us as athletes, you kind of, like you said, you're in that bubble, you're immersed in your kind of training and playing, and sometimes you don't even really know who you are because you're that immersed in it. And then when you come out of it, it's like, okay, well, what do I actually want to be? And even when you're playing, you could have that train of thought that you may be thinking about your next steps, but then where do you go? Like, if you don't know, like you said, you don't know if you want to be an accountant. You may have qualifications for something, but again, we all know that qualifications are great, but it doesn't mean to say that you're going to get an opportunity in that particular field. So the self-development thing, that is a massive thing. I mean, for you,
I think sorry, on that, there's also the dressing room banter, or there's a certain type of way that you can be seen in the dressing room, and you sort of have to go with it to a certain extent. Otherwise, it's going to be a hard time for you. So it can be hard maybe to break out from this sort of stereotypical way of behaving.
Yeah, that's true. And from the outside looking in, it may be hard to understand like what you mean by that. But until you're actually involved in, say, the dressing room banter and things, again, not everyone's the same type of personality. You've got kind of introverts, extroverts, and other people that may have interests outside of their chosen sport, but they may not be forthright in letting people know for fear of being ridiculed and things like that, either from the coaches or from their teammates. So there's a whole heap of different kind of strands and facets that can make it a bit more difficult than it really needs to be. I mean, for you, like, it sounds like you're quite entrepreneurial. You've come from, like you said, Tamworth, and then you started your own kind of flooring business, and obviously now you're doing what you're doing, and you've done other things like roofing and stuff as well. So you're not. It doesn't sound like you're scared to put yourself out there. So from that perspective, like, what kind of transferable skills do you think you've got that allowed you to do those things?
Well, first of all, so I grew up on a farm, which is, you are then self-employed, if you like, running your own business. But I think as with transferable skills, footballers, they have a points target, or they can set themselves targets that they need to reach. So they can be quite goal orientated. So footballers, a lot of them are driven. Some people say, oh there's a lot of lazy footballers out there, and people that don't really want it. I don't know if that, maybe 1 out of 100 or 2 out of 100 I played with would maybe fall into that category. In general, footballers, they want to win. And they are driven to some extent. When they step outside of the football world, maybe they need a little bit of guidance. They certainly need to find their feet a little bit. I just took a job, and I would advise players who haven't done any sort of self-development, know what they want to do. Just take it up. If there's a job, just take a job. Don't think about if that's what you want to do. Then let yourself settle. But transferable skills, they can obviously work in a team. They are, they like to be measured against a goal. Are we achieving these goals? This is from my perspective. Whereas, we work Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday in football, and we're measured in a work environment, civilian world. Is sometimes longer. You get the horizons further away. Or for when you're next getting measured to what you're doing. I think footballers are reasonably good at taking feedback. That's what I noticed. The first job I was in Warwick in an office, if someone said something negative to someone else, or it could be perceived negative, or if I said to you, come on, you need to just sort it out this way, that we're not doing it like that. People can be a bit, oh, what does he mean? Am I not good enough and all this? Well, footballers in general, they're okay with taking that, because in football at halftime, things have got to go fast. Information go back and forth quickly, not all this arm around you. So they're quite resilient to an extent if they're given the right tools.
I think you're right in everything you said there. And in terms of kind of, from a generic kind of holistic perspective, what are your thoughts on retirement and how it should be approached? Do you think it should be approached in a different way? So what I mean by that is, whenever I was playing, whether I was kind of 18 or 29, whenever someone broached the conversation about retirement, it was always kind of either a negative conversation or it was actually the opening line was seen as a bit negative. It was like, okay, don't really want to think about it. Or it was like, maybe, okay, well, what are you actually going to do after you finish playing? Like if it was one of your friends asking, it's like a bit of a negative, as if to say, well, you only know football. What are you actually going to do? So all of those things, like encompassed into one, like what are your thoughts on how we should or how athletes should approach retirement in this day and age?
I think when it starts from very young. If you even in academies, I've coached in academies, and I think it starts from coaches putting sort of the pressure onto the players of saying, if you want to make it, and it's the only success criteria is if they make it as a professional. It's like anything else is the end of the world. Instead of flipping it around and say, just be as good as you have to try and be as good as you can be and enjoy it, and then see where it takes you, because it opens up for it not being such a failure. If you reach 20, you might have had your first professional contract, but then if you then don't get your second, then you might never play football again, and that's terrible. I think that's one of the things that should be the aim for academies. Make sure that the players that play here, they are playing when they're 35 as well at some level. I think, if the more you talk about it, and maybe the more, courses, the more you're made aware of life outside football, that will help. Because if I'm starting as a 25-year-old thinking about, or if I myself have to go and find information about after retirement, maybe I'm already taking my eye off the ball a little bit, or I'm so focused on playing football that I see it as a failure that even thinking about retirement. I think I think something like personal development is really can be really powerful, and I thought it when I was playing. That when we had people from the PFA coming in, it was something to do with pensions, but sometimes it was about make some investments, and I'm sure that has changed a lot. But if we can really dig into this personal development, because you can make a career after football, but it can also just help you in general in being happy. So I think that's where the focus should be.
Definitely. And with regards to kind of football, do you miss playing at all?
I miss the game. I miss, just even a five-a-side. With the company here, we played a five-a-side here, indoor five-a-side at the weekend. That was the first time I played for a long time. And I've got no cartilage in my, no meniscus in my knees. I've had an operation in one leg, and the other knee is absolutely screaming now. So, so I miss. I mean, when I first retired, I just turned my back on it. It hurt. It hurt that I didn't even want to go to games. People said, are you going to games? It just hurt too much just watching, because I was playing there last week. I felt, and then Coventry Former Players Association. They invited me along to games and got me involved again, and got me doing some radio work, and I just knew straight away. I felt the buzz for it, and I didn't realize how much I actually loved the game until I finished.
Wow, that's amazing, and it's good from Coventry City to obviously recognise you as a former player and kind of try and bring you back into the fold to a certain degree. So that's massive. I mean, going forward or going back a little bit in time. So I know you was a Faroe international. So talk to me about that experience, obviously playing for the Faroe Islands and obviously playing international level football.
Yeah, that was some experience. I mean, to give you a bit of context, the country's around 50,000 people. So what's that? 1/6/7 or something of Coventry's population.
Yeah.
There's I think there's one grass pitch up there. So hardly any flat areas because it's all hilly and rocky. So amateur league, a few brown envelopes flying around. But it was the hardest working team I've ever played in. You know, totally strong mentality. They just wanted to work hard, and we were training on a Friday night before a Saturday international, and they were smashing each other in training. And I was like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah.
And chill out. Great experience. Playing the games, listening to the national anthem. I mean, my mother's from the Faroe Islands, so we've been up there on holiday all through my childhood. But it was always sort of her country and not mine. I saw myself as being Danish, and my relationship with the Faroe Islands was always through her.
Yeah.
But once I went up there on my own, I now have my own relationship with the Faroe Islands, and that was great. My debut was in Switzerland, and we lost 6-0, and I said, "Jeez, this is hard going." And we got 1 point out of the 10 games I played. I managed to score a goal, but then in the same game I broke my rib. So but got to play. So we were in the same qualification group as France, who ended up in the World Cup final against Italy. The one where Zidane dinked the penalty and it ended up doing a headbutt. So they were in our group, and actually, I was reading in the paper. You remember the newspapers in paper format. So I was reading the paper, and I said, "Oh, Zidane is making his international comeback because he'd retired.
Yeah,
so he's making his international comeback." And I was like, "All right, France, they're in our group." So I thought, "All right, I'll just look down." Oh, and his comeback game is against the Faroe Islands.
Oh wow!
So him and Makalele, they made their international return in that game against us. So yeah, amazing time, but also from the games perspective, to being on that stage with these big players. So that was, I mean, you just look at the French team then: Thierry Henry, Lilian Thuram, Makalele, Zidane, and so on. Great players. But it was the experience with the Faroe Islands of preparation was disappointing. You had to get on the low budget flights, and you had to make 7 connection flights, 7 different flights to go from England to Israel and back. And I had to then play for Coventry on the Saturday. And they didn't want to change it, so I bought my own ticket and I just flew straight back. It gives you a different perspective because you get to play against really good players. You get to play against different ways of playing football. Really it's testing your emotions. Playing against Cyprus, they were really testing the referee, diving and scratching, spitting, and all these sort of things, and it tests you. Anyone should go and play international if they could.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And talk to me about kind of being a helicopter pilot. That's left field for me. So that, and again, another thing that sounds amazing. So how did that come about, and talk me through it?
Well, I suppose it was a little bit of a childhood dream to go and fly a helicopter, that and a footballer. So I sort of managed to do both, but I'd lived close to an airport both at Bournemouth and at Bradford. And when I was at Bradford, I was sort of thinking, oh, maybe I should go and do it. And I looked into doing a course, but then nothing happened. Went to Blackpool, and one of my mates were from Denmark, and a load of them were, and one of them said, well, just go and do it, because it's now, you know, you have the chance now, it won't be there forever. So I just thought, all right, I'll go and do it. And it was brilliant. Obviously, it's a little bit like, you know, you've got to do a circle here and tap your head at the same time, and you know, all these different controls you have. There's right foot, left foot, there's both hands, and you got to do this, and a cyclic is moving just to keep it steady. And but then there's the 7 exams I had to do, from meteorology to human performance to radiology. So it was there was some great. It was great to learn, but then when you finished with it, it's like, all right, now I can go and fly a helicopter. But what do I do? So really, I wanted to do the commercial license. So I got the license as a private pilot, but to do the commercial license, I had to do another, I don't know, say 100 hours, 70 hours, 70, 80 hours. But then my contract came to an end, and obviously it's quite expensive for 1 hour in a helicopter. So because I looked at it a little bit as a way of getting a job afterwards. But it didn't manage, but it was a great experience.
It must be amazing. Feeling. I mean, so what does it feel like when you're flying around? Like, obviously, it must be a surreal feeling knowing that you're in control of the actual helicopter itself.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything. Anything new, you got to practice, and then you learn it. And once I mean, obviously, you're not sitting there on your own. You have your instructor with you, and as you get better, you are given more controls. So he will have all the same controls and have his hands on them, and he'll just release them to you as you get better. Obviously, so the taking off is great, because anything sort of close to the ground, any maneuvering is great. And some of the exercises we were doing would be, you'd be up in, I don't know, 3 meters, and then you'd be flying like that, and then you had to brake, but in the same without climbing. So that's some technical work being done, and then you have to fly sideways.
Oh wow!
There's loads of things. Do a full 360 where the tail stays over the same point. So it's like, oh, where are you? So,
wow. Sounds surreal. Again, sounds amazing. Just moving on from that. Recently, we've heard about Crystal Palace. I don't know if you've heard, but I think they're the first club to introduce like the player or the after player care program for like players that have been released. I don't know if they're officially the first, but it's said in the media that they were. So I think that's obviously amazing. I'm guessing now that probably more clubs are going to come out and do the same thing. So from that point of view, do you think like more help is needed from clubs and kind of organisations within football and sport in general to help those players?
Well, that sounds good. That I think that in the Premier League, there's a lot of money available to help players afterwards. I think there'll be a debate at some point, or it's along the lines where clubs are saying, well, you have your trade union. I mean, it can't be our responsibility to a certain extent, but whose responsibility is it to help these players on? Because you could argue that it is the club's responsibility. You've dangled a carrot, you've taken it away, or you could say, well, the player wasn't good enough in the first place, and so there's a debate there. But when the finances are there, I think it's great initiative to take, and they're taking the lead, which is great to. But in Denmark, I noticed many years ago, I was reading about a player who was signing for a club, and he explained the reason for signing for that club was that that they would help him afterwards with getting a civilian job. So,
Right.
but in Denmark, so the money is not there's not lots of money going around, but maybe the understanding that football is just something that happens for a short period of time is more there. So, but that sounds good. I wasn't aware of that, but it's a good first step.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned about that player in Denmark, I think you said. So for me, I finished my career playing in Iceland, and professional league, high level, but all the players had jobs. So we'd train in the evening because we had like maths teachers. We had a guy called John Johnson I think he signed for Sony Records when I was out there. He was like a singer. He's got his own band and everything. He'd be on the radio in the day when we're driving around and stuff. So it was just a different type of environment, and the level of understanding and education from that perspective, as well as involving sport in that for both women and men and girls and boys, they're just light years ahead. And I'm going back to 2012. So again, from that perspective, if they can do it with less kind of finances and infrastructure, then surely we can do it over here. So there's something that can be done. Obviously, Crystal Palace have taken that leap, and again, that's a starting point. But like you said,
yeah, I think
where do you take it? Where does it stop? Is it 3 years, 2 years, 10 years? It all depends on the individual and also finances and things as well. So it's a tough one.
But in England, you're fighting against the perception and the stories that footballers are just by default millionaires. As soon as you stepped onto the pitch and you played in front of 10,000 people, well, you must be just well off and you can just put your feet up. But you don't hear about the players who say are playing for the likes of Tamworth or League One, League Two clubs that are under the radar, and they are working. They might have a civilian job, and then they might trade off doing an education because they're following the dream. Because if they don't follow it, they will regret it, and then they're 35 and they didn't do the education, and then it's a bit of a limbo. So, but the country like Iceland or a lot of the Scandinavian countries, they understand that football isn't, by default a profession as such. It is, but as you sort of need to prepare a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of kind of advice going forward, have you got any advice for any kind of footballers out there, whether it be young or old, or in kind of that middle stage of their career, like when it comes to retirement and the thought process behind it? What's your advice for them if you've got any?
Well, I bore a few people about this, as well as other things, I suppose. But I think self-development. I love self-development, and it is a lot more accepted now as years go on. And when I was playing, I missed something. I missed something. Some people and managers and coaches were of the perception that, well, if you don't think football all the time, if you don't watch all the football that's on TV, then you can't be committed enough. And to me, that's a little rubbish. I needed something else as well. And I did an accountancy course. I did in Coventry. I did business planning course, and because it was just fresh, it took me away from football. But I think I think at any stage, if you feel you've got searching for something, do some kind of self-development classes or courses or something that challenges your mind, because first of all, you'll need to deal with a little bit of a big change in your life as you used to have it as a footballer. But then also you might find out and discover things about yourself, and I think that in the end it makes you happy.
Yeah, 100%, and that's great advice. So I really appreciate that. And like I said, thanks for your time and for coming on. Enjoyed the chat. So you can just let us know before we kind of leave each other. Just let us know again, like the company you're working for, and if you are on social media, let everyone know like where we can find you and things like that.
Yeah, well, the company I work for is called GeoGuide. This is it.
Nice.
I have my little mug here, GeoGuide, and we yeah, it's a white label app. Visit Exeter and shortly Experience Kent. They're kind of a couple of apps there in the UK. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I don't talk too much on Twitter, but yeah, I'll leave others to that. I'll just follow.
Awesome. I really appreciate that, Claus. Really enjoyed the chat, and hopefully we can keep in touch going forward at some point. And then yeah, hopefully speak to you soon. Good luck with everything.
Yeah, well done. Cheers, Danny. Good show. Brilliant. Good subjects.
No problem at all. Speak to you soon.
Cheers,
Bye
mate.
now. Bye bye.
Bye bye.